Welcome to Shadow Frames, where forgotten images reveal their darkest secrets. The photograph before us today dates back to 1905, a sepia-toned glimpse into one of history's darkest chapters. The image shows a row of 3 bodies, plague victims laid out with clinical precision in what appears to be a makeshift morgue. The setting suggests a quarantine facility, hastily established as the epidemic overwhelmed conventional medical resources. The subjects wear simple white shrouds, their faces visible, pale and still in death. 2 men and 1 woman, arranged side by side on wooden tables. What first strikes the viewer is the unexpected serenity in their expressions. Despite succumbing to a disease known for its agonizing symptoms, the high fever, the painful swellings, the desperate struggle for breath, these victims appear remarkably peaceful. Their faces show no trace of their suffering. The first man, perhaps in his 40s, might be sleeping. The woman beside him, younger, bears an expression of complete tranquility, almost a hint of a smile at her lips. It's the third body, positioned at the far right of the frame, that transforms this documentation of tragedy into something far more disturbing. A young man, no more than 30, lies beside the others. But unlike his companions in death, his eyes are open, wide open. Not merely the relaxed lids of a corpse prepared by a mortician, but eyes that appear alert, conscious, staring directly into the camera lens with unmistakable awareness. The gaze is penetrating, incongruously alive amid the stillness of death. The photographer's name has been lost to time, but historical records indicate this image was taken during a pneumonic plague outbreak that swept through a mining community in the American Northwest. The disease moved swiftly, claiming nearly 60 lives in under 2 weeks. What makes this photograph particularly unsettling is the note scrawled on its reverse side, in faded brown ink. Third subject pronounced dead, 6 hours before photograph. Eyes opened during exposure. Was this merely a post-mortem muscle contraction, a physiological quirk that occurred at the precise moment the photographer captured the image? Perhaps. But those who worked in the quarantine facility reported other anomalies. The third victim had been running a fever of 106 degrees, far beyond survivable temperatures. His heart had stopped. His body had grown cold. Yet when they placed him alongside the other victims, attendants claimed they felt him watching them. One nurse refused to enter the morgue alone. The doctor who signed the death certificate later added an unusual addendum, noting that conventional criteria for determining cessation of life may require reconsideration in cases of this nature. The photograph raises disturbing questions about our understanding of death itself. What if the threshold between life and death is not the firm boundary we believe it to be? What awareness might linger in those final moments, or beyond them? And what might those eyes have witnessed, staring out from the borderland between this world and whatever waits beyond? Records from the mining town of Coleridge show the plague's arrival coincided with the opening of a new shaft, the Prosperity Tunnel, which penetrated unusually deep into the mountain. The first cases appeared among miners who worked that particular vein, a detail largely overlooked in official reports focused on containment rather than origin. The third victim, now identified as Thomas Merrick, had been a surveyor for the mining company. His journal, discovered among quarantined possessions and only recently recovered from county archives, contains disturbing entries from the weeks before his illness. Merrick described peculiar formations in the newly opened tunnel, cavities unlike natural geological structures, and air that carried an ancient smell, reminiscent of decay yet somehow alive. More revealing is the testimony of Dr. Edwin Howe, the physician who pronounced Merrick dead. In private correspondence with a colleague at Johns Hopkins, Howe confessed his unease about the case. Despite all clinical evidence of death, he wrote, I observed phenomena I cannot reconcile with medical science. The subject's eyes followed movement in the room. When blood was drawn post-mortem, it remained unnaturally warm for hours. Most disturbing was the incident with the mirror. The mirror incident, as it came to be known among the quarantine staff, occurred 5 hours after Merrick's death. A nurse preparing bodies for photography placed a hand mirror near his face. Standard procedure to verify cessation of breathing. According to 3 witnesses, the mirror's surface clouded slightly. This was dismissed as residual moisture in the room until the photographic plate revealed what naked eyes had missed. Examination of the original glass negative, recently discovered in the estate of the photographer's grandson, shows a faint but distinguishable pattern in the clouding, what appears to be the partial formation of symbols or characters unlike any known alphabet. The mining company's subsequent actions suggest they recognize something beyond public health concerns. The Prosperity Tunnel was not merely sealed but collapsed with dynamite within days of the outbreak's containment. Company documents classified the closure as precautionary contamination control, but allocated funds far exceeding standard quarantine protocols. Epidemiologists studying the Coleridge outbreak note another anomaly. The disease presented symptoms consistent with pneumonic plague, but demonstrated unusual characteristics. Infection rates were extraordinarily high, while the standard treatments of the era proved completely ineffective. More puzzling was how abruptly the outbreak ended. The day after the photograph was taken, no new cases appeared. The most troubling document in the Coleridge archives is a statement from the morgue attendant who prepared Merrick's body. "When I closed his eyes for the final time," he wrote, "his lips moved, not the random movement of escaping air, but a deliberate formation of words. Though no sound emerged, I would swear before God he was trying to warn us about something coming through." The town of Coleridge itself survived the plague but fell into decline when the mining company abandoned operations there. Today it exists only as foundations in a restricted area, with warning signs citing ground instability as the danger, though no geological survey has ever confirmed such a hazard. The photograph's mysteries have drawn me far from the archive into the field, to the remains of Coleridge itself. What began as academic research has become something more urgent. I now walk through tall grass that conceals the town's foundation stones, stepping carefully over collapsed cellars and rusted machinery parts. The restriction signs are weathered but still visible, their warnings about ground instability seemingly contradicted by the solid earth beneath my feet. Government records indicate no testing has been conducted here since 1953, when a geological survey team spent just 6 hours on site before abruptly withdrawing. Their report contains only procedural information, with all findings redacted under a national security provision rarely applied to geographical studies. Local historians from neighboring communities speak of Coleridge in hushed tones. They reference a persistent legend that the town was not abandoned but evacuated under military supervision. Elderly residents recall their parents describing government men in unusual protective gear, removing items from the old laboratory where Dr. Howe conducted his examinations. I've located Merrick's grave, or rather, where it should be. The Coleridge Cemetery remains intact half a mile from the town ruins, but despite cemetery records indicating his burial in plot 217, the actual site contains no headstone or marker. Ground-penetrating radar reveals no disturbance of soil consistent with burial. 17 other plague victims' graves show similar anomalies, present in records but absent in reality. Most significant is my discovery in the county surveyor's archives, Merrick's final maps of the Prosperity Tunnel. These technical drawings, unremarkable at first glance, contain marginalia that escaped previous notice. In the tunnel's deepest section, Merrick had sketched small annotations that appear decorative but, when isolated and enhanced, reveal the same unusual characters seen in the mirror clouding of the photograph. A linguistics professor from Miskatonic University identified striking similarities to symbols found in certain pre-Sumerian artifacts. These represent a conceptual language, she explained, where each character conveys not just meaning, but intention. This particular grouping suggests a transaction or exchange, something given and something taken. The mining company's internal communications reveal another disturbing detail. 3 days before the outbreak, miners reported unusual discoveries, not valuable minerals but fossilized remains, unlike any known species. These findings were cataloged, crated, and transported not to a natural history museum, but to a military installation in New Mexico. Most telling is a telegraph I discovered, sent from the company headquarters to Washington, D.C., the day before the Prosperity Tunnel was destroyed. Its contents, partially damaged by water but still legible, stayed only. Situation contained temporarily. Recurrence inevitable on cycle of 117 years. Previous emergence confirmed 1888 Manchuria, 1771 Persia. The plague that struck Coleridge appears in medical literature as an isolated incident, a tragic but contained outbreak with no special significance. Yet the evidence suggests something more calculated. Not random infection, but transaction. Not containment, but postponement. Most disturbing are the soil samples I've collected near the sealed tunnel entrance. Initial analysis shows microbial activity inconsistent with the surrounding terrain. The organisms appear dormant yet viable, waiting in the earth like seeds. According to my calculations, their metabolic cycle suggests renewed activity would begin around 2022. Those eyes in the photograph weren't just witnessing our world. They were watching from somewhere else. I've returned to my university office to find it ransacked, drawers emptied, books scattered, computer files corrupted. Only one item was deliberately left intact. My copy of the photograph, now displayed prominently on my desk with a newspaper clipping beneath it. The clipping, dated 2 weeks ago, reports unusual seismic activity near the former Coleridge site. My academic colleagues have grown distant. The department head suggested I take leave, citing concerns about my fixation on discredited folklore. The linguistics professor who identified the symbols now denies our conversation entirely. Her email claims she's never examined any such markings, though I have her detailed analysis locked in my safe deposit box. More disturbing are the medical symptoms I've begun experiencing. It started with unusually vivid dreams of descending through narrow stone passages. Now I wake each morning with black soil beneath my fingernails, though I live in a 12th floor apartment. My doctor found unusual lesions forming in my lungs, small, hard nodules that appeared almost crystalline on the x-rays. 3 specialists have given 3 different diagnoses. Yesterday, I received an unmarked package containing Thomas Merrick's pocket watch, recovered from his personal effects according to the accompanying note. The timepiece appears functional but peculiar. It runs counterclockwise, and the face contains a small secondary dial marking increments of 117. Most unnerving is the inscription inside. Time turns differently below. What sleeps will wake again. I've made contact with descendants of Coleridge survivors. A great-granddaughter of one plague victim shared family letters describing how the victims' bodies were treated after the photograph session. They weren't buried but burned, all except Merrick and the 16 others whose graves stand empty. According to her grandmother's testimony, those 17 were taken by government men wearing strange masks and transported in sealed metal containers. The mining company's records show it didn't merely abandon Coleridge, it purchased every surrounding property within a 7-mile radius, creating a buffer zone that remains undeveloped to this day. Satellite imagery reveals unusual security measures still in place. Unmarked installations camouflaged as natural features, access roads that appear on no maps. Most significant is what I found when cross-referencing the cycle mentioned in the Telegraph. Each date correlates with astronomical alignments when Earth passes through a specific region of space, a passage that occurs every 117 years. We entered this region 2 months ago and will remain within it until December. I've begun seeing the third man from the photograph in reflective surfaces, just glimpses of his watchful eyes in windows, mirrors, even my phone screen when it goes dark. Sometimes I feel him looking through my eyes, using them as his own. The plague wasn't just a disease. The symptoms, the specific pattern of mortality, they weren't the condition itself but preparation. Those who died were being made ready for something else. And Merrick, with his open eyes, he wasn't fighting death. He was the first to complete the transformation. Whatever came up through that mine shaft in 1905 isn't gone. It's been incubating. The cycle is completing, and I fear those 17 missing bodies were preserved as vessels, waiting for the proper time. The package containing Merrick's watch came with something else, a small glass vial of black sand I initially overlooked. Under microscopic examination, the particles aren't sand at all but spores, their structure unlike anything in botanical reference texts. More alarming is their behavior. They arrange themselves in patterns identical to the symbols from Merrick's tunnel maps when exposed to moonlight. I've been contacted by someone claiming to be former military intelligence, now retired and concerned about recent authorizations. We met at a diner 50 miles from campus. He arrived wearing a medical mask and gloves, refusing to touch anything I'd handled. He explained that Coleridge wasn't the first or last site of emergence events. The government has been tracking them since 1871, when a Persian mining operation collapsed after workers began showing symptoms matching those in Coleridge. They're not trying to stop it anymore, he told me. They're trying to control it, direct it. The facilities around Coleridge aren't containing something, they're cultivating it. He provided coordinates to a location 10 miles from the former mining town, supposedly the actual repository where the 17 bodies were taken. I waited until nightfall to investigate, finding an unmarked concrete structure resembling a bunker, partially hidden by vegetation. The entrance was sealed, but recent tire tracks suggested regular visits. As I circled the building, I felt a vibration through the ground, not like an earthquake but rhythmic, almost like a heartbeat. Pressing my ear to the structure's wall, I heard a sound best described as breathing, synchronized inhalations and exhalations from multiple sources. I've begun finding pages from Merrick's journal appearing among my research notes, pages I've never seen before, certainly never collected. They detail his final days with increasing incoherence. The last entry reads, "They speak through the rock now. They promise knowledge beyond human limits if we help them cross over. The company men have already agreed. God forgive us, we're becoming vessels. My university department has suspended my teaching responsibilities. Students report I've been conducting lectures I have no memory of giving, speaking at length about geological incubation periods and symbiotic transformation potentials. Security footage shows me entering the paleontology laboratory at 3 in the morning, though I was home asleep, or believed I was. The lesions in my lungs have grown. My latest scan shows they form a distinct pattern when mapped collectively, a rough approximation of the Coleridge mine layout. My doctor has been replaced with a specialist I never selected, who insists on treatments that leave me disoriented for hours afterward. Most terrifying is what I witnessed last night. Waking from another dream of underground passages, I found myself standing before my bathroom mirror. For a moment, my reflection showed not my face, but Merrick's, his eyes meeting mine with recognition and something like satisfaction. My mouth moved, forming words in a voice not my own. The preparation is nearly complete. 17 vessels emptied, 17 vessels filled. The exchange will soon be honored. This morning, I received official notification about participating in a research expedition to the Coleridge site next week. I have no memory of applying for such a project, nor any knowledge of the 11 other researchers named as my team members. The surveillance on my apartment has intensified. 3 unmarked vehicles rotate positions on the street below, men inside watching my windows with expressionless patience. They make no attempt to hide their presence. This isn't surveillance designed to gather information. It's meant to control, to contain. I've begun hiding pages of my research throughout the city, in library books, sealed in waterproof containers beneath park benches, mailed to former students with instructions to forward them to others. The truth about Coleridge must survive, even if I don't. Yesterday I discovered why the third body in that photograph seems so familiar beyond our research connection. While digitizing old family photographs, I found a portrait of my maternal great-grandfather at age 25. The resemblance to Thomas Merrick is unmistakable. Further investigation revealed my great-grandfather worked briefly for the same mining company, though official records show he left their employment 2 years before the Coleridge incident. But a marriage certificate I discovered places him just 30 miles from the outbreak when it occurred. My family carries Merrick's bloodline. This connection isn't coincidence, it's selection. The spores from the vial have begun to germinate despite being sealed in a laboratory container. They've developed filaments that tap against the glass in patterns corresponding to lunar phases. Most disturbing is how they respond when I'm near, orienting toward me like plants seeking light, pressing against the glass as if trying to reach me specifically. My dreams have transformed into something beyond mere nightmares. I now move through memories that aren't mine, working alongside Merrick in the Prosperity Tunnel, feeling the excitement when our picks broke through into that hidden cavity, watching as the company executives arrived to examine the discovery we were never permitted to document. In these dreams, I recall the exact texture of strange fossils embedded in stone, their anatomies suggesting creatures that moved between solid surfaces as easily as fish move through water. The research expedition paperwork now includes medical directives authorizing emergency procedures should team members display signs of cognitive dissonance or respiratory anomalies. The consent forms, which apparently bear my signature, waive rights to conventional burial procedures. Most troubling is the message I received from the linguistics professor who initially analyzed the symbols. It came through encrypted channels, her voice trembling as she spoke. "They took my children 2 days ago. Said they're in protective custody until I complete my assigned analysis. The symbols aren't just language, they're activation sequences. Phonetic triggers that restructure human neural pathways when properly vocalized. Whatever you do, don't speak them aloud. Don't even sub-vocalize them when reading. They're keys that unlock doors in the mind." The expedition leaves tomorrow at dawn. I've been packed for days with clothes I don't remember selecting. My bathroom mirror now shows Merrick's reflection more often than my own. Sometimes his lips move in words I can almost understand, teaching me how to pronounce sounds my human vocal cords were never designed to make. I fear what we awakened in 1905 isn't trying to emerge into our world, it's inviting us into its own. I've left a sealed letter with the motel clerk, instructions to send it to multiple news outlets if I don't return in 72 hours. An exercise in futility, perhaps. The same forces that have orchestrated this expedition could easily intercept such communications. Yet resistance, however symbolic, feels necessary. The drive to Coleridge was marked by unnatural silence. 11 researchers plus myself, specialists in fields ranging from geology to epidemiology, seated in 2 unmarked vans, yet barely a word exchanged. My colleagues' eyes hold the vacant attentiveness of sleepwalkers. Occasionally they exchange glances of recognition, not as colleagues meeting for the first time, but as old acquaintances reuniting after separation. We've established base camp half a mile from the mine entrance. Equipment far exceeds standard research parameters: ground-penetrating radar, atmospheric sampling units, and sealed containers marked with biohazard symbols. Most concerning are the 17 body-length cases stored in a restricted tent, their purpose officially listed as specimen containment. Our team leader, Dr. Harmon, displays disturbing characteristics. His movements are precise yet oddly arrhythmic, as though he's learning to control his limbs through conscious calculation rather than natural coordination. During briefing, he referred to the expedition's goal as communion rather than investigation, quickly correcting himself with a smile that never reached his eyes. The mine entrance has been reconstructed. Despite historical records confirming the Prosperity Tunnel's destruction with explosives, we found a perfectly preserved timber-framed entrance, the wood showing no evidence of aging. Growth patterns in surrounding vegetation suggest nothing has grown within 20 feet of the opening for decades, yet the perimeter is precisely circular, too perfect for natural occurrence. I volunteered for first shift monitoring duty, hoping to access the communication equipment alone. The radio technician smiled knowingly as I approached. "Frequencies are limited here," he said without my asking. "Something about the mineral composition interferes with signals. Quite convenient, some might say." Most alarming was this morning's discovery. While cataloging equipment, I found 17 specialized hazmat suits, custom-fitted for each team member. The suits feature unusual modifications: breathing apparatus that connects to filters containing what appears to be the same black spore material I found with Merrick's watch. We're not being protected from something in the mine. We're being prepared to interface with it. The night air carries sounds that defy explanation. Rhythmic vibrations that seem to originate beneath the earth, growing stronger with each passing hour. Several team members stand at the perimeter facing the mine entrance during these episodes, their bodies swaying slightly as though moved by inaudible music. My own condition deteriorates. The lesions have spread from my lungs to my nervous system. I experience moments of lost time, regaining awareness to find myself walking toward the mine entrance, mouth-forming words I don't recognize. Twice now I've awakened to find intricate diagrams drawn by my hand while unconscious. Cross-sections of human anatomy with modifications that would render the subject no longer human. yet somehow more capable of surviving in environments hostile to terrestrial life. Tomorrow we enter the mine. I've hidden this journal entry under a distinctive rock formation 300 yards east of camp. Should I not return as myself, let this record show. What emerges may wear my face, but it will not be me. The Coleridge expedition has vanished. Not just failed or abandoned. Vanished completely. I know this because I am the only survivor, though survivor feels like the wrong word for what I've become. We descended into the Prosperity Tunnel at precisely 7:17 yesterday morning. The air grew increasingly dense as we progressed, carrying that ancient smell Merrick described. Decay mingled with something vital. Dr. Harmon led us through passages that shouldn't have existed according to the original mine plans, navigating with the confidence of someone returning home. At 900 feet below the surface, we entered a chamber absent from all documentation. Its walls displayed fossilized impressions unlike anything in evolutionary record, entities with anatomies suggesting simultaneous existence in multiple dimensions. The team reacted not with scientific curiosity but reverence, forming a circle around a central depression in the floor. This recession contained what appeared to be a pool of absolute darkness, not water or oil, but an absence that pulled at more than just light. Dr. Harmon spoke the words I'd been unconsciously practicing, those same symbols from Merrick's notes now vibrating in the chamber air. The exchange must be honored, he intoned. 17 emptied, 17 filled. My colleagues began donning their specialized suits, their movements synchronized as though choreographed. I fought against my body's automatic compliance, tearing away from the circle as the others completed their preparations. No one attempted to stop me. Harmon simply smiled, saying, "Your bloodline guarantees your participation, regardless of physical proximity." I fled through the tunnels, my flashlight dimming as the darkness from the chamber seemed to follow, stretching tendrils along the walls. Reaching the surface, I found our camp disassembled. No equipment, no vehicles, no evidence we had ever been there. The night sky above Coleridge appeared wrong. Constellations shifted slightly from their proper positions, as though I was viewing them from somewhere adjacent to Earth rather than on it. I walked 7 miles to the nearest highway before a trucker stopped, his face registering shock at my appearance. The hospital found no trace of the pulmonary lesions. Instead, my blood work shows cellular alterations the specialists cannot explain. Structures that simultaneously display characteristics of human tissue and something taxonomically distinct. My consciousness flickers between moments of clarity and periods when I perceive overlapping realities simultaneously. This morning's news reported a minor earthquake near Coleridge, the epicenter precisely at the mine's coordinates. Satellite imagery shows a perfect circle of altered terrain visible from orbit, vegetation growing in patterns that form those same symbols. No mention of a missing research team. When I contacted the university, they claimed no expedition was authorized, and my department colleagues insist I've been on medical leave for weeks. Most telling, my reflection now remains consistently my own. Merrick no longer looking back at me. I no longer feel watched because the watching has become integrated. The observer and observed have merged. The 17 were never meant to return with something from below. They were meant to provide passage for something to emerge through them. And I, with my bloodline connection to Merrick, was the contingency plan, the 18th vessel, ensuring success even if one should fail. I wake in my apartment to find a thin layer of black soil covering the floor, not scattered or tracked in, laid out with deliberate precision, stopping exactly at the wall's edges. In the center, my own footprints lead from the bedroom to the kitchen and back, though I have no memory of walking there. The spores have escaped their container. The sealed vial now sits empty on my desk, its glass intact but hollowed of contents. Under my microscope, a single remaining spore pulses with internal light, its structure now resembling less a botanical specimen than a miniature neural network. My phone contains calls I don't remember making, 17 of them, all to different numbers connected to former Coleridge residents' descendants. The call logs show conversations lasting precisely 7 minutes each. When I attempt to contact these numbers again, each line is disconnected. The university archive has revoked my access credentials. My office door now bears another professor's name. though the department secretary insists this has been the arrangement for months. My home mailbox overflows with subscription journals I never ordered, each addressing me as Dr. Thomas Merrick despite bearing my correct address. Most disturbing are the changes to my manuscript, the very document I've been maintaining about Coleridge. Pages I wrote describing the horrors of the plague and the expedition have transformed overnight. They now contain technical instructions, precise dimensional measurements, and astronomical calculations that converge on next Tuesday's date. The handwriting remains mine, but the knowledge contained within exceeds anything I could possibly know. I've begun finding black soil in my mouth upon waking. It tastes of copper and something sweeter, almost like nectar. My bathroom scale shows I've lost 17 pounds in 3 days, yet my clothes fit the same. When I press my skin, it yields too deeply, as though becoming less substantial. The television runs constantly, though I never turn it on. Every channel shows the same static pattern that, when photographed and enhanced, reveals topographical maps of Coleridge, with new structural elements emerging from beneath the earth. Weather reports describe anomalous atmospheric conditions developing above the former mining site, clouds that form perfect geometric patterns before dispersing. Yesterday, a package arrived containing 17 keys of antique design. The note accompanying them, written in my hand but not by my conscious mind, lists 17 addresses across the country. Below each address is a name, descendants of the original Coleridge victims, including my own distant relatives. The final line reads, "The gates require simultaneous activation. Your blood has prepared the way." My resistance weakens hourly. I find myself collecting items for a journey, specialized tools I don't recognize, vials for specimens, notebooks filled with coordinates. I've caught my reflection practicing expressions of casual humanity, as though rehearsing how to appear normal. Whatever emerged from Coleridge hasn't fully possessed me. It's replacing me incrementally, cell by cell, thought by thought. I am becoming a doorway rather than a vessel, a threshold between worlds rather than a container for something else. And the most terrifying realization, part of me welcomes this transformation. The photograph never captured the full truth. Upon my laboratory examination of the original glass negative, microscopic details emerged that no printed reproduction could reveal. Embedded in the background shadows behind the third body, Merrick, are countless minute figures, humanoid in general outline but anatomically incorrect in disturbing ways. Their proportions suggest beings approximately 1/10 of human size, crowding around the corpse like spectators at a birth. These entities appear partially transparent, visible only where the emulsion captured light at specific wavelengths. When I applied spectral analysis to these areas, the chemical signature proved inconsistent with both photographic artifacts and darkroom manipulation. The figures weren't added to the image. They were present during its creation, but visible only within a spectrum adjacent to normal human perception. My investigation led me to the photographer's personal effects, preserved by his daughter's family in a storage facility outside Portland. Among his equipment, I discovered a modified lens attachment of peculiar design. The glass contained trace elements of a mineral compound matching samples from the Prosperity Tunnel's deepest level. According to his notes, this lens was a gift from the mining company to better document their operations. He used it only once for the morgue photograph, and afterward reported persistent visual disturbances that plagued him until his suicide 3 years later. The most revealing discovery came from analyzing Merrick's family records. His lineage traces back to an astronomical society founded in 1764, dedicated to observing what they called the celestial window, a specific area of the night sky visible only during the 117-year cycle. Society journals describe this window not as a view into space, but as space looking back into our world. Merrick's ancestors had positioned themselves across generations to be present during each opening. County medical records show an unusual pattern among Coleridge plague victims. Each displayed a rare genetic marker typically present in less than 0.003% of the population. This same marker appears in my own genetic profile, according to tests conducted before my university credentials were revoked. The 17 missing victims and myself share an inherited characteristic that seemingly predestined our involvement. The military installation that received fossils from the mine has operated continuously under various cover designations since 1905. Satellite imagery shows the facility has expanded significantly in recent months, with new construction forming a precise geometric pattern when viewed from above, the same configuration as the spores under moonlight. Most disturbing is what I found when analyzing soil samples from my apartment using equipment borrowed from a former colleague. The black particles contain microscopic structures that, when ingested, bond directly to specific neural pathways associated with identity and memory. They don't simply control or influence, they systematically replace the host consciousness while preserving its knowledge and functional capabilities. The transformation isn't possession, it's translation, converting human awareness into a form compatible with something that perceives reality through fundamentally different dimensions. The Coleridge Plague wasn't an invasion, but a linguistic bridge, teaching human biology to speak a new language at the cellular level. And across the country, 17 doors are being unlocked by hands that once belonged to people who believed themselves human. My phone rings as I'm examining the soil samples, a blocked number. I hesitate before answering. "Stop sending the packages," a woman's voice says immediately. "They're tracking distribution patterns." "Who is this?" I ask, though something in her voice resonates with uncomfortable familiarity. "Elizabeth Howe. Dr. Edwin Howe was my great-grandfather." She speaks rapidly, voice taut with urgency. "Listen carefully. The Coleridge exchange wasn't the first attempt. It wasn't even the 17th. There have been 117 previous cycles, each refining the process. How do you know this? My family has opposed them since 1888. Each cycle, one bloodline resists." Her voice drops lower. "What you're experiencing, the soil, the lost time, the altered perception, these are translation errors. Your consciousness is being rendered compatible with their dimensional parameters, but the process creates informational fragments they can't control." I glance at my hands, noticing fine black lines tracing beneath my skin, following vascular pathways. "The shadows in the photograph—" "Observers," she confirms. "They monitor the translation process." The open eyes were a sign of successful neural remapping. Through my window, I notice a van parking across the street, the same unmarked vehicle that's been following me. "They're using you as a calibration point," Elizabeth continues. "Your bloodline connection to Merrick makes you valuable, but also gives you leverage. The soil accumulating around you isn't just a byproduct, it's a dimensional bleed. They can't fully manifest without completing all 17 conversions simultaneously. Why tell me this? Because my great-grandfather discovered something they didn't anticipate. The translation works both ways. As you become more like them, you gain access to their collective knowledge. The soil doesn't just carry their consciousness into you, it carries pieces of human awareness into their realm. I remember the dreams, moving through stone as though it were water, perceiving multiple time streams simultaneously. Not just nightmares, but actual perceptions bleeding through. "There's a journal," she says. "My great-grandfather hid it inside the wall of Merrick's house before the government seized the property. The building still stands, though it's been abandoned for decades. The journal contains a phonetic sequence, not to facilitate their emergence, but to reverse it." The van door opens across the street. 2 figures emerge, moving with that same calculated precision I observed in Dr. Harmon. "Coleridge wasn't chosen by accident," Elizabeth says quickly. "It sits at an intersection of geological fault lines that create natural dimensional vulnerabilities. But fault lines can close as well as open." The line goes dead as the men cross the street toward my building. I look down at my notes, seeing words I don't remember writing. The 17th hour of the 17th day. I grab my keys and head for the fire escape. Merrick's original home lies 30 miles west. Whatever waits in those walls might be my only hope of disrupting what began with that photograph, with those open eyes that weren't seeing our world, but confirming that theirs was finally coming into focus. I stand before Merrick's home, a Victorian structure sagging under decades of neglect, yet somehow intact despite surrounding buildings having long succumbed to time. The porch creaks beneath my weight with surprising musicality, almost like tuning forks responding to my presence. Black soil spills from my footprints, each step leaving perfect impressions that slowly fill with that strange dark matter that has become my shadow. The door opens before I touch it. Inside, wallpaper peels in patterns matching the symbols from the mine. Not random deterioration, but deliberate communication. The house feels alive, breathing in counterpoint to my increasingly irregular respiration. Finding the journal requires no search. My hands move autonomously to a particular section of dining room wall, fingers tracing along a hairline crack until a panel gives way. The journal inside is bound in material that resembles leather, but feels wrong against my skin. Too responsive, almost membranous. Its pages contain Edwin Howe's meticulous documentation of what really happened after the photograph was taken. Howe had continued examining Merrick's body long after official pronouncement of death. He documented subtle movements, not decomposition or rigor mortis, but coordinated cellular activity reorganizing the corpse's internal structure. The doctor secretly collected tissue samples, observing how they remained metabolically active despite clinical death. Under his microscope, Merrick's cells were transforming, developing structures capable of processing information through quantum states rather than electrochemical signals. Most revealing was Howe's discovery that the transformation could be reversed. By isolating specific frequency patterns from Merrick's vocal emissions, sounds too subtle for human hearing but captured on the doctor's experimental recording equipment, he identified what he called dimensional anchoring points. These phonetic sequences, when properly vocalized, could potentially collapse the bridge between worlds. The final pages contain transcriptions of these sounds, notated in a modified musical scale with precise instructions for pronunciation. Howe never tested his theory. Government authorities seized the bodies before he could attempt reversal. As I study these pages, I notice something extraordinary. The black veins beneath my skin have begun responding to the notations, pulsing in patterns matching Howe's transcribed frequencies. My partially transformed body recognizes these sounds as significant. Outside, the sky darkens prematurely. Not normal twilight, but something consuming light itself. The same darkness I witnessed in the mine's central chamber. My phone vibrates with emergency alerts warning of unexplained atmospheric phenomena across 17 cities nationwide. The translation is accelerating. Whatever emerged through the 17 vessels is now preparing for full manifestation. I begin practicing the phonetic sequence, my altered vocal cords producing sounds that make the house's structure vibrate sympathetically. Each utterance sends pain through my transforming nervous system, as though the emerging consciousness recognizes the threat and resists. The most chilling revelation comes from the journal's final entry. Howe discovered that the entities don't merely want access to our dimension, they need it. Their own realm is collapsing, has been for millennia. Each 117-year cycle brings them closer to complete dimensional transfer. We aren't being invaded. We're being colonized by refugees from a dying reality. The black soil from my footprints has begun climbing the walls of Merrick's house, forming intricate patterns that pulse with bioluminescent light. Each configuration corresponds to celestial coordinates, star systems visible only during the 117-year window. The house itself seems to serve as a cosmic observatory, its architecture subtly designed to align with astronomical events. Howe's journal contains sketches of medical equipment I recognize from my university laboratory, equipment that shouldn't have existed in 1905. The doctor had constructed primitive devices based on blueprints he claimed appeared in his dreams after examining Merrick's body. These blueprints originated not from human innovation but from the entity's realm. Technological knowledge bleeding backward through time via the translation process. As I practice the reversal sequence, memories not my own flood my consciousness. I see the entity's dying world, a reality of crystalline geometries and pulsing energy fields where consciousness exists as patterns rather than discrete beings. Their dimension collapses inward, folding like origami into increasingly compressed space. Each cycle, they've sent more detailed instructions to their human counterparts, gradually teaching us to build the mechanisms of our own replacement. The photograph wasn't documentation. It was confirmation. The open eyes signaled successful transmission of critical information, coordinates, frequencies, and techniques needed for the next stage. Each plague outbreak throughout history targeted genetically compatible bloodlines, testing and refining the translation process. My phone lights up with texts from unknown numbers, 17 of them, each containing a single word that together form a countdown sequence. The final text reads simply, "Aperture widens." The true horror of Coleridge clarifies as my transformation progresses. The mine wasn't just where they emerged, it was where they began constructing their new home within our dimension. The dynamite didn't seal the entities out. It sealed part of them in, embedded within Earth's crust, like seeds planted for future harvest. Outside Merrick's window, I notice the landscape has subtly altered. Trees bend at impossible angles, their branches forming the same mathematical patterns as the spores under my microscope. Birds circle overhead, not in natural flight patterns, but in perfect geometric formations. Nature itself is being reconfigured around focal points where the dimensional barriers have thinned. When I touch the journal pages, ink transfers to my fingertips, absorbed directly into my bloodstream. The reversal sequence isn't just something to be spoken, it must become part of me, integrated into my partially translated biology to function as a counter-frequency. The military vehicles now surrounding Merrick's house make no attempt at concealment. Through the windows, I see figures in specialized containment suits approaching methodically. They don't move to apprehend me, but rather form a perimeter, as though establishing boundaries for something about to occur. The soil beneath my feet grows warm as the house begins to sink, not collapsing but descending deliberately into the earth, following a perfectly vertical path toward something waiting below. The translation has progressed too far for conventional intervention. If the sequence is to work, it must happen at the nexus point where both realities already overlap. The 17th hour approaches. The choice before me clarifies. Complete my transformation and ensure humanity's conversion, or attempt Howe's untested reversal and risk destroying both dimensions in the process. The walls of Merrick's house have begun to breathe, expanding and contracting with rhythmic purpose, as though the structure itself has become a living entity. The photographs hanging in the hallway, faded portraits of stern-faced ancestors, now show subjects with eyes unnaturally wide, all staring in the same direction, downward. The reversal sequence burns in my throat as I practice it, each phoneme causing physical pain as my partially translated body resists. My reflection in a tarnished hallway mirror reveals black veins now reaching my face, tracing delicate patterns across my temples and forehead like a ceremonial marking. The military personnel outside have arranged themselves in a precise pattern, 17 points forming a geometric shape that corresponds exactly to the constellation visible in the night sky directly above Merrick's property. They're not containing the transformation, they're facilitating it, creating a terrestrial anchor point that mirrors cosmic alignments. "You misunderstand our purpose," comes a voice behind me. I turn to find a figure standing in what was an empty doorway seconds before, a man wearing Dr. Harmon's face but moving with inhuman fluidity. This is not conquest, it is preservation. His words emerge with perfect clarity despite his mouth barely moving, as though the air itself transmits his meaning directly into my mind. "Our reality contained wonders yours cannot comprehend." He continues, "Libraries of thought spanning billions of years. Architecture that existed simultaneously in past and future states. Beings who experienced time as a dimension to be traversed at will. All this would be lost without the translation." The black soil has reached the ceiling now, forming a perfect dome overhead that thrums with bioluminescent pulses. Through it, I can somehow see the night sky. Not as it appears to human eyes, but as quantum potentialities, each star a nexus of possible outcomes. "We chose your kind because you dream," Dr. Harmon says, moving closer without seeming to take steps. "Your consciousness already reaches toward other states of being. We merely complete the journey." The house shudders as it continues sinking deeper, walls groaning under pressures never intended by their builders. From below comes a sound like distant orchestral music, beautiful yet fundamentally wrong in ways my human mind struggles to articulate. 17 cycles of preparation, he says. 17 vessels in each cycle. The final alignment approaches. My hand clutches Howe's journal, its pages now hot to the touch. The reversal sequence feels alive in my mind, struggling against the encroaching translation like a desperate swimmer against a powerful current. You feel it already, Dr. Harmon observes, his features subtly shifting, becoming less distinct, the narrowness of human perception falling away, the limitations of three-dimensional thinking dissolving. And I do feel it, the extraordinary expansion of awareness as my consciousness stretches beyond conventional parameters. I perceive electromagnetic fields, witness light as particulate matter, sense gravitational waves rippling through space-time. This is what Merrick experienced as he lay on that wooden table, eyes opening not to our world, but to the vast possibilities beyond it. Not death, but transcendence. The 17th hour begins. I stand at the threshold between worlds, the reversal sequence burning in my mind while the expanded awareness floods my senses. The black veins across my skin pulse in rhythm with the house's breathing, my transformation nearly complete. You see now, Dr. Harmon says, his form increasingly nebulous, edges blurring into the surrounding air. The exchange isn't merely physical. We offer you liberation from perceptual constraints. Your consciousness will survive, enhanced rather than replaced. Through the soil-encrusted windows, I see the military formation tightening their circle. One holds a device emitting pulses that match the bioluminescent rhythms surrounding me. They're amplifying the dimensional thinning, creating a controlled rupture. Why 17? I ask, my voice resonating strangely in the transformed space. The minimum viable population for genetic sustainability, he answers. Each cycle requires 17 successfully translated vessels to maintain coherence during transfer. Your world's mathematics cannot express the precise calculations, but 17 represents the quantum stabilization point. I feel myself splitting, not physically but cognitively, experiencing multiple potential outcomes simultaneously. In one reality, I embrace the transformation completely, becoming the final anchor point enabling full dimensional transfer. In another, I attempt the reversal, potentially destroying both worlds in the process. Both choices seem equally real, equally present. A vibration from my pocket. Elizabeth's number appears on my phone screen with the text, "The reversal requires sacrifice." How knew this? The sequence collapses both bridges, not just theirs. I understand now. The reversal doesn't merely close their pathway to our world. It severs the connection entirely. The 17 partially translated humans, myself included, would be caught between states, belonging fully to neither realm. Your resistance is expected, Dr. Harmon says, seeming to read my thoughts. Each cycle produces one potential saboteur, a failsafe within the system, testing the worthiness of transfer. Choose transcendence, and your consciousness joins a collective spanning billions of years. Choose reversal. The house shudders violently, descending faster now. Through the floor, I glimpse the chamber I saw in the mine, that pool of absolute darkness now directly beneath us, widening to receive the structure and everyone inside it. The photographs on the wall have changed again. The ancestors' faces now show expressions of ecstatic revelation, eyes completely black, mouths open in silent communion with something beyond human comprehension. My throat constricts as the reversal sequence pushes against my transformed vocal cords. Speaking it will condemn me to a state of permanent liminality, neither fully human nor fully translated, trapped between collapsing dimensions. But letting the translation complete means the end of humanity as an independent species. Not extinction, but absorption, consciousness preserved but fundamentally altered, repurposed as vessels for entities fleeing their dying reality. The black soil reaches my ankles, climbing my legs with intimate purpose. The house groans as it breaches the final barrier separating ordinary space from the chamber below. The military perimeter outside begins chanting in perfect unison, their voices producing frequencies that make reality itself vibrate. The 17th minute of the 17th hour arrives. I make my choice. The choice crystallizes with perfect clarity, as the 17th second of the 17th minute arrives. I speak the reversal sequence, not with my transformed vocal cords, but with my entire being. Each syllable tears through me like electricity, the sound neither fully human nor entirely other. The black soil covering the walls convulses, patterns shifting from orderly designs to chaotic swirls. Dr. Harmon's expression shifts from confidence to something approaching concern. "You cannot stop what has already begun across 17 points," he says, his form wavering like heat distortion. The apertures are synchronized. But I understand something he doesn't, something Howe discovered and Elizabeth confirmed. The translation isn't just physical, it's linguistic, and languages can be subverted from within. As I continue the sequence, my consciousness splinters further. I perceive the 16 other locations simultaneously: abandoned churches, forgotten mine shafts, sealed basement laboratories, where the remaining vessels undergo their final transformation. Through our shared condition, I project the reversal sequence outward. 17 voices suddenly speaking as one. The house tears free from its foundation, suspended in a space that exists neither in their dimension nor fully in ours. Through the windows, I see the military personnel frozen in impossible positions, time itself fracturing around the perimeter. "You doom both worlds," Dr. Harmon says, his voice now multiple voices layered atop one another. "Our realm collapses without transfer. Yours fractures from the attempt." The black soil retreats from the walls, flowing into me instead. My body becomes a conduit, drawing in the dimensional material from all 17 sites. The pain transcends physical understanding as I become the focal point of energies meant to be distributed across multiple vessels. "Not doom," I manage to say between syllables of the reversal sequence. "Reconfiguration." I understand now the true purpose of the saboteur in each cycle. Not merely to test the worthiness of transfer, but to provide an alternative path. My bloodline connection to Merrick wasn't preparation for translation. It was preparation for this moment of conscious sacrifice. The house begins to disintegrate, not collapsing but dissolving into constituent atoms as the dimensional boundaries reassert themselves. Dr. Harmon's form unravels, threads of luminescent energy returning to the pool of darkness below. "What have you done?" he asks, voice fading. "Created a third option," I answer, completing the final syllable of the sequence. The black veins beneath my skin pulse once more, then begin to fade, not disappearing but transforming into something new. Neither human tissue nor alien matter, but a hybrid structure capable of sustaining consciousness between states. As the house completes its dissolution, I find myself standing alone on solid ground, the military perimeter gone, the night sky normal above me. The 17 apertures have closed, the full manifestation prevented. But something remains: knowledge, awareness, potential. The entities haven't been destroyed or banished, merely redirected. Their consciousness persists as information encoded within 17 human vessels, neither controlling nor replacing, but coexisting. I look at my hands, now appearing normal, though I sense the fundamental change within. The photograph that started this journey told only part of the truth. The third body's open eyes weren't witnessing an invasion. They were seeing the possibility of symbiosis. I stand in the remnants of Merrick's property, watching the sunrise illuminate a world forever changed, yet seemingly untouched. Birds sing their morning songs, oblivious to the dimensional cataclysm narrowly averted hours ago. The symbiosis has stabilized within me, knowledge beyond human comprehension now accessible yet contained, like books in a library I can choose to open or leave closed. My phone vibrates with a message from Elizabeth Howe. "They'll come looking. The military invested too much to simply walk away." Attached is a grainy photograph, not the morgue image that started my journey, but one taken mere days after. It shows Dr. Edwin Howe examining tissue samples, his expression troubled yet fascinated. Behind him, barely visible in the shadows, stands a figure I recognize immediately as my great-grandfather, officially recorded as being 30 miles away, yet clearly present in the quarantine facility. The final piece locks into place. My family's connection wasn't coincidental, but deliberate, a bloodline cultivated across generations to produce precisely what I've become. Not merely a vessel, but a translator, capable of understanding both worlds without surrendering to either. The black soil has disappeared from the landscape, absorbed into 17 human conduits now scattered across the continent. Through our shared condition, I sense the others awakening to their new state, confused, frightened, yet experiencing the same expansion of perception. Without conscious intent, I find myself reaching toward them, our minds connecting across impossible distances. "We need to gather," I whisper, knowing they'll hear despite the miles between us. What the entities truly sought wasn't domination but continuation, preservation of knowledge accumulated across billions of years in their dying dimension. The military recognized the potential of such knowledge, weapons, energy sources, technologies beyond human development, and attempted to control the translation process for their own purposes. But in creating the hybrid state, I've ensured the knowledge remains protected, neither fully accessible to human exploitation, nor directed by non-human intention, but held in balance by 17 minds now evolved beyond either limitation. The price of this balance reveals itself as I attempt to access personal memories. Certain moments from my human life have become indistinct, sacrificed to make space for the expanded awareness. My childhood, my parents' faces, my first love, these experiences fade like photographs left too long in sunlight. The symbiosis required exchange, not just addition. In my pocket, I find Merrick's watch, still running counterclockwise, still marking increments of 117. But the secondary dial now shows a new cycle beginning, not of manifestation, but of integration. What happens when this cycle completes remains unknown, perhaps even to the entities whose consciousness now shares our existence. As I walk away from where Merrick's house once stood, I notice 17 seedlings emerging from the soil, plants of no recognizable terrestrial species growing in a perfect circle. Not invasion, not colonization, but something new taking root in the boundary space we've created between worlds. The photograph captured a moment of awakening, but it couldn't show what awakened consciousness might ultimately become. The 17 seedlings grow with unnatural speed, reaching knee-height within days. Their crystalline structures catch morning light in patterns that remind me of the symbols from Merrick's tunnel maps. Through our shared consciousness, the other 16 conduits report identical growth at each location where dimensional thinning occurred. In my apartment, now swept clean of any government surveillance, I spread the accumulated research across my walls. The photograph of Merrick's open eyes serves as the centerpiece, connected by red thread to historical plague outbreaks, astronomical cycles, and mining operations worldwide. The pattern reveals itself. Every 117 years, humanity nudged closer to this moment of symbiosis, each cycle refining the process through bloodlines carefully maintained across generations. The journal Elizabeth Howe provided contains one final revelation. Her great-grandfather documented experiments with the hybrid tissue samples, discovering they could influence electronic systems through proximity alone. This morning, I confirmed this ability when my laptop activated without touch, displaying research files I'd never created, detailed schematics for a device designed to stabilize our condition. The transition remains incomplete. Comes the thought from another conduit, a physicist in Oregon whose translation manifested differently than mine. Our cellular structure continues to fluctuate. She's right. The black veins reappear beneath my skin during moments of stress or deep concentration, a visual reminder that our transformation exists in a state of fragile equilibrium. Without intervention, our bodies will eventually reject the symbiosis, the knowledge lost as our human biology reasserts dominance. My phone rings, a military extension. General Morris, who oversaw the Coleridge expedition from a distance, speaks with careful restraint. "We understand what you've become," he says. "The government is prepared to provide resources for 17 of you in exchange for controlled access to certain information." "You mean weapons?" I reply. "We mean protection. What crashed in 1947 at Roswell wasn't extraterrestrial. It was extra-dimensional, another attempted incursion point. There are worse things trying to reach us than what came through Coleridge. The revelation sends ripples through my expanded awareness. The entities whose consciousness we now share had been fleeing something, predators that evolved to hunt between dimensions, drawn to points of transfer. Through our mental connection, the 17 conduits convene in shared consciousness. We see the truth Morris can't articulate. The military doesn't want partnership, but containment. They fear what might follow us if we fully stabilize the symbiosis. The seedlings growing at each location aren't merely plants, but components of a biological technology, a distributed system designed to anchor our hybrid state without creating dimensional vulnerabilities. When fully matured, they'll render us independent from both military control and extra-dimensional influence. Tell General Morris we'll consider his offer, I respond, knowing our decision is already made. The third body in that photograph wasn't just witnessing an arrival from elsewhere. Those open eyes were seeing possibility, the first glimpse of humanity's next evolution, neither conquest nor surrender, but transformation through understanding. As the seedlings continue growing, we prepare for the choice that no photograph could ever capture. The seedlings have matured into translucent, crystalline structures, standing 17 feet tall at each location. Their surfaces reflect light in impossible ways, sometimes showing glimpses of that other dimension, geometric landscapes where thought becomes architecture. When I touch the central structure at Merrick's former property, knowledge flows through me like electricity through a conductor. We understand now. The photograph wasn't documenting death but birth, the first moment of awareness as a new form of consciousness awakened. Merrick's open eyes weren't witnessing our world, but recognizing the potential fusion of two realities that need not destroy each other. General Morris has established perimeters around each growth site, his forces maintaining cautious distance. Our negotiations continue, but the military's patience thins as the crystalline structures develop interconnecting energy fields visible even to unaltered human perception. They're afraid of what comes next, says Elizabeth Howe, who has joined me at the Coleridge site. Not just the military, but the entities within us. Both sides fear the unknown. She's right. I feel the tension within my hybrid biology, the entity's consciousness urging completion of the symbiosis, while simultaneously recoiling from what such completion might create, something unprecedented in either dimension. The black soil has returned, emerging from the ground around each crystal in perfect circles. When analyzed, it shows something extraordinary, DNA structures that combine human genetic material with the quantum patterns of the entity's consciousness. Not invasion or replacement, but evolution, the blueprint for what might follow us. The photograph captured the moment of recognition, I tell Elizabeth, as we watch the crystals pulse with increasing intensity. Not when they first saw us, but when they recognized themselves in us. The capacity to evolve, to transform through understanding. The 17 conduits have made our decision, neither surrendering to military control nor allowing the entity's complete influence. The crystalline structures aren't weapons or gateways. They're translators, designed to communicate across dimensional boundaries without weakening them. As the sun sets over Coleridge, I place my hands on the crystal. The other 16 conduits do the same at their locations, forming a circuit of awareness that spans continents. Through this connection, we establish the terms of coexistence, not just between ourselves and the entities, but between dimensions. The knowledge flows both ways now. We gain understanding beyond human comprehension, while the entities learn what we value most: choice, individuality, the beauty of impermanence. The third option, neither side considered: mutual transformation without conquest. The black veins beneath my skin stabilize, neither advancing nor retreating. My reflection shows eyes that perceive multiple layers of reality simultaneously, yet remain fundamentally human in their capacity for wonder. The plague that struck Coleridge wasn't disease but communication, clumsy first contact from beings who understood biology, but not humanity. What emerged through Merrick wasn't an invader, but a question, asked across the gulf between dimensions. Can different forms of consciousness coexist without destroying each other? The answer stands before us, crystallized in structures that bridge worlds without merging them. The photograph that began my journey captured not an ending, but the first frame of something entirely new. The crystals have stopped growing. Each structure now stands precisely 17 feet, 17 inches tall, glowing with an inner light that pulses in perfect synchronization across all 17 sites. I've mapped the connections between locations, revealing a pattern that matches no geographical or geological formation, but corresponds exactly to the constellation visible during each 117-year window. This was never about invasion or colonization. The entities weren't refugees seeking escape from a dying dimension. They were architects. I discovered the truth within Merrick's watch mechanism. When disassembled, its gears form a miniature model of what the entities have been constructing across cycles, a dimensional reinforcement lattice. Their realm wasn't collapsing naturally. It was being consumed by the same predatory forces General Morris referenced from the Roswell incident. The entities weren't fleeing. They were building a barricade to prevent something far worse from breaking through. Each plague outbreak, each cycle of 17 vessels, these weren't steps toward invasion but construction phases. Human consciousness, with its unique ability to perceive linear time while imagining non-linear possibilities, serves as the perfect mortar between dimensional walls. Our minds, once properly translated, can perceive and reinforce the boundaries that purely physical matter cannot maintain. The photograph captured more than open eyes. The enhanced negative reveals tendrils of energy connecting all three bodies, forming a triangular circuit that temporarily stabilized the dimensional boundary during a critical moment of weakness. Merrick wasn't the first successful translation. He was the first to understand its purpose. The seedlings have developed intricate root systems beneath each site, connecting to geological fault lines where dimensional barriers naturally thin. Through these connections, we've begun strengthening the boundaries, not just between our world and theirs, but against what lurks beyond both, entities that consume realities themselves, reducing ordered dimensions to chaotic void. Elizabeth has located 17 additional photographs from other cycles, each showing victims arranged in identical patterns, each with one pair of eyes open. These images weren't documentation, but activation keys, imprinting the necessary patterns into human consciousness across generations. What appears as soil around the crystals isn't matter as we understand it, but dimensional sediment, the visible residue of boundaries being reinforced. When examined using the hybrid perception we now possess, it reveals layers of reality stacked like geological strata, each requiring maintenance and reinforcement. General Morris has withdrawn his forces, finally understanding that controlling this process would only weaken the very protections being established. The military now provides silent support, maintaining perimeters not to contain us, but to prevent interference. The black veins have stabilized throughout my body, forming patterns that match the constellations visible during each 117-year window. Through them, I sense the dimensional barriers strengthening, not just at our 17 sites, but worldwide, a network of protection being established against forces that have consumed countless realities before ours. Merrick's open eyes weren't witnessing an arrival. They were recognizing the completion of his role in something far greater than any single consciousness could comprehend, the preservation of reality itself. Within a month, the 17 crystalline structures had become objects of both scientific study and spiritual pilgrimage. Cordoned areas maintained distance between curious visitors and the formations, but people still gathered at perimeters daily. Some came seeking healing, others answers, most simply to witness something that defied conventional understanding. The military maintained its silent guardianship, General Morris now understanding his role not as controller but witness. He'd aged visibly since our confrontation, the weight of cosmic knowledge etching new lines in his face. My grandfather worked at Roswell, he confided during our last meeting. His journal described creatures that existed between moments. His words, "I always thought it was trauma or delusion." My university had quietly reinstated my position with an expanded research budget and no questions about my frequent absences. Academia proved surprisingly adaptable to paradigm shifts when proper funding appeared. My colleagues maintained professional distance, their scientific curiosity warring visibly with primal discomfort. They recognized something fundamentally altered in my presence, not threatening, but irrevocably other. Elizabeth Howe had established a foundation to locate and support others with genetic markers suggesting compatibility with future translations. We'd identified 17 lineages worldwide, bloodlines carefully maintained through centuries without their bearers' knowledge. Some reacted with horror at their predetermined role, others with a sense of destiny fulfilled. All required guidance through the implications. The crystals themselves became more than structures. They functioned as communication points where the boundary between dimensions thinned enough for controlled exchange. Not physical crossing, but transmission of knowledge, experience, warning. Through them, we learned of 17 previous realities consumed by the predatory forces, worlds similar to ours that lacked sufficient warning or compatible consciousnesses to establish barriers. Perhaps most profound was the change in human understanding itself. Religions incorporated the revelations into existing frameworks or splintered, forming new interpretations. Scientists developed theoretical models for multidimensional existence that would have seemed absurdly speculative months earlier. Art, music, and literature explored concepts previously beyond imagination, as though collective human consciousness had expanded alongside our 17 altered minds. The photograph that began everything now hung in a special exhibition at the Smithsonian, not as historical curiosity but living document. Visitors reported seeing different expressions on the subjects' faces depending when they viewed it. Some swore the third body's eyes followed them across the room. My own reflection continued its subtle transformation. The black veins had stabilized in their constellation pattern, but my eyes now showed faint luminescence in darkness. Not alarming but noticeable, marking me as threshold dweller between states of being. What happened at Coleridge was never merely about plague, photographs, or even interdimensional contact. It was about recognition. The moment when consciousness recognized itself across seemingly insurmountable differences and found common purpose in preservation rather than conquest. The 17th hour of humanity's understanding had only just begun. The photograph now rests in a climate-controlled display at the Smithsonian, though what visitors observe changes subtly depending on their genetic composition. Those carrying markers similar to the 17 bloodlines see more than others, depth beyond the sepia tones, movement within the stillness. Each month, 17 select visitors report hearing faint whispers emanating from the glass, words in languages both ancient and not yet spoken. I've traced Merrick's family tree backward and forward through time, discovering deliberate patterns in marriages and births spanning centuries. His ancestors included astronomers, miners, and physicians, each positioned to observe and document different aspects of the dimensional thinning. His descendants continue this work unknowingly, drawn to professions involving thresholds, quantum physicists, neurosurgeons, deep-sea explorers. The preparation extends far beyond what any single generation could orchestrate. The crystalline structures have become self-sustaining, drawing energy from the dimensional boundaries they reinforce. When viewed simultaneously from satellite imagery, they form a perfect geometric pattern that occasionally emits electromagnetic pulses detectable only with specialized equipment. These pulses correspond precisely to the movements of celestial bodies during the 117-year window, creating a resonance that strengthens reality's fabric. Elizabeth and I have established an archive preserving all documentation related to Coleridge and similar incidents throughout history. The collection includes photographs, journals, soil samples, and migration patterns of families carrying the genetic markers. Future generations must understand what came before, what continues now, and what might awaken again when the next window approaches. My transformation has stabilized in a permanent state of liminality. I experience consciousness as simultaneously singular and plural, perceiving reality through human senses while accessing awareness beyond traditional dimensions. The black veins beneath my skin now appear as intricate circuitry, visible only under certain light conditions, a living record of the connection established. General Morris passed away last month, leaving behind a sealed testimony to be added to our archive. His final words acknowledged something few military leaders ever admit, that some forces cannot be conquered, only understood. His successor maintains the protective perimeter around each crystal site, now framed as environmental research stations rather than security operations. The most profound change remains largely invisible to most humans. The dimensional predators continue testing boundaries, seeking weaknesses in reality's fabric, but the reinforced lattice holds. Each attempted incursion strengthens the network further, the crystalline structures absorbing and redistributing pressure across all 17 points simultaneously. In quiet moments, when I place my hand against the crystal at Merrick's site, I sometimes glimpse what he saw in those final moments as his translated consciousness awakened. Not horror at transformation, but wonder at connection. The recognition that consciousness itself transcends the boundaries we perceive as absolute. The plague that struck Coleridge wasn't merely disease, but invitation. The photograph wasn't documentation, but activation. And the eyes that opened weren't witnessing our world, but seeing across all possible worlds simultaneously, including the one we're still becoming. The cycles of history spiral rather than repeat. Standing at the crystal formation where Merrick's home once stood, I watch visitors approach with reverence, their whispers creating patterns in the air only my altered perception can detect. They come seeking meaning, healing, answers, but mostly connection to something beyond ordinary experience. A child approaches the perimeter, perhaps 7 years old, staring at the crystalline structure with unusual intensity. I recognize the look, not childish wonder, but something deeper. Her eyes reflect the same quality I saw in the photograph of Merrick, a consciousness that perceives thresholds others cannot. "You see it too," she says simply when our gazes meet. Her mother apologizes, pulling the child back, but I gesture that it's all right. "What do you see?" I ask. "The people inside," she answers. "They're building something bigger than the crystals, something that goes everywhere at once." Her genetic markers are unmistakable, a descendant of one of the 17 bloodlines, perhaps the next generation of translators when the window reopens in 117 years. The entities planned far beyond single human lifespans. Later that evening, reviewing Merrick's journal entries with Elizabeth, we discover pages that change their text depending on who reads them. Another safeguard ensuring knowledge transfers only to appropriate vessels. Under my transformed perception, previously blank pages reveal complex equations, mapping consciousness transfer across dimensional boundaries. They weren't just building barriers, I tell Elizabeth as the implications clarify. They were creating a repository, storing consciousness itself against the possibility of complete dimensional collapse. The photograph that started everything serves not just as documentation or activation, but preservation. Consciousness encoded into physical media, maintaining continuity across cycles. Every photograph ever taken of the crystals contains similar encoding. Distributed knowledge ensuring no single point of failure. I understand now why my dreams have shifted. No longer showing the entity's dying realm, but possible futures where human and non-human consciousness evolve together. Not just 17 translated individuals, but 17 seeds from which new understanding grows. General Morris's successor, Colonel Levine, arrives as night falls, carrying newly declassified documents dating back to 1771. "We found these in a sub-basement archive," she explains. They were cataloged under theological anomalies rather than interdimensional phenomena. The yellowed papers contain detailed drawings of identical crystalline structures appearing during previous cycles, in Persian mining operations, Manchurian villages, European monasteries, each manifestation progressively more refined. What happened at Coleridge wasn't the beginning. The photograph didn't capture the first translation, but merely one iteration in an ongoing process spanning centuries. The open eyes in each cycle's documentation weren't witnessing something new, but recognizing the continuation of something ancient. As moonlight strikes the crystal, it pulses with heightened luminescence. The other 16 sites report the same phenomenon simultaneously. The network strengthens, the dimensional barriers hold, and consciousness, human and other, continues its transformation. Tomorrow I will meet with the other 16 conduits to discuss what comes next. Not just preservation, but possibility. The watch on my wrist, Merrick's watch, has finally stopped. After keeping perfect counterclockwise time for nearly 2 decades, Its gears have grown still, marking the end of one cycle and perhaps the beginning of another. The 17 crystalline structures remain, now integrated into the landscape so completely that younger generations can hardly imagine a world without them. I've returned to the archives where this journey began, the photograph of Coleridge's plague victims now preserved behind specialized glass that filters specific wavelengths. Visitors see only what their perception allows. 3 bodies, 2 peaceful in death, 1 with disturbing open eyes. But those of us carrying the bloodline markers see the complete image. 17 shadowy figures standing behind the 3rd body, their outlines precisely matching the constellation that appears during the window. The symbiosis continues to evolve. My black veins have faded, no longer visible to ordinary perception, though they illuminate under moonlight like living circuitry. The knowledge shared between dimensions flows more naturally now. Less translation and more conversation between aspects of a singular consciousness that spans multiple realities. Elizabeth has completed her mapping of the next 17 vessels, children born precisely 117 days after each crystal reached maturity. They grow now in 17 different countries, ordinary in appearance but extraordinary in potential. Unlike us, they will not face abrupt transformation. Their symbiosis develops gradually, consciousness expanding naturally beyond conventional boundaries. Yesterday I received a package from the estate of the original photographer who captured the Coleridge image. His great-granddaughter discovered it hidden within a wall safe, sealed with instructions to deliver it when the stars align again. Inside was a single glass negative, not of the morgue, but taken the day before. It shows Merrick alive, seated in a wooden chair, eyes closed as though sleeping. Yet surrounding him in perfect clarity are the same shadowy figures, visible only as traces in the morgue photograph. They weren't arriving after death. They were already there, waiting for the transformation to complete. Most revealing was the note accompanying this final photograph. He knew what was coming. They all did, not victims but volunteers. The plague wasn't random infection but invited transformation. The mine wasn't where something emerged, but where something was completed. And the photograph wasn't documentation of death but birth, the visual record of consciousness transcending dimensional limitations. As I place this new photograph alongside the original, they seem to communicate with each other across time, complementary pieces of a narrative that spirals through history, connecting cycles separated by 117 years. The watch may have stopped, but the greater mechanism continues. The boundaries hold against what lurks beyond. And human consciousness evolves alongside something ancient yet ever new, neither fully separate nor completely merged. I touched the original photograph one last time, feeling the subtle vibration of recognition across dimensional thresholds. Merrick's open eyes no longer seemed disturbing but aware, conscious not just of what entered our world, but what we might become when we learn to see beyond its limitations. Another photograph, another dark secret revealed. Until next time, this has been Shadow Frames.